Remember when Australia's borders were slammed shut during the pandemic? Well, they're open again, and wow, did the world notice. Today, we're jumping into the official government data to really understand what's behind this huge migration rebound, a wave of people that is already changing the face of the country. Let's get into it.
Just look at this number, 7 million. A little over, actually. That's how many temporary visas Australia handed out in the 2022-23 financial year. And keep in mind, this was the very first full year the borders were completely open again. It's a massive figure, and it signals a pretty dramatic shift.
Now, you might think this is just things getting back to normal, right? But it's really not. The sheer scale and who's actually coming tells a completely new story about Australia's place in the world and the people who are now choosing to call it home.
All right, first things first. Let's really try to wrap our heads around just how big this boom is. The numbers are kind of mind-blowing, and they really set the stage for everything else we're going to talk about.
Okay, this chart really says it all. We went from just under 2.3 million temporary visas in 1 year to over 7 million the next. That's a 205.9% increase. In a single year. We're not talking a gradual climb here. This was like a rocket launch, an absolute explosion of movement.
So the numbers are huge, we get that, but who are these people behind the 7 million visas? Where are they coming from, and why are they coming to Australia? Let's take a closer look.
Let's break it down. If we're talking about the skill stream, people coming for work, one country just jumps off the page, India. More than a quarter of all skilled migrants came from India. And get this, the number of visas for Indian nationals in this category shot up by 85% in just 1 year. China, Nepal, and New Zealand are big players too, but the headline here is definitely the surge from India.
But hold on. What happens when we look at the family stream? The whole picture flips. Suddenly, China's at the top, making up almost 20% of these visas. And you see other countries like the Philippines and Afghanistan playing a much bigger role. It really shows there are two totally different stories playing out at the same time. One driven by the economy, the other by family.
So, we know who's coming. But how are they getting here? What are the actual pathways that led people build a new life down under? Let's break down the main routes.
The whole system can seem super complex, but really, Australia's permanent migration program kind of boils down to 3 main stories. You've got the skill stream, which is all about the economy, filling jobs that Australia needs. Then there's the family stream, which is all about connection, bringing loved ones together. And finally, the humanitarian program, offering protection to refugees and people in really tough situations.
So what kind of skills are we talking about? Well, the data is super specific. For employer-sponsored visas, the top jobs are software programmers, registered nurses, and chefs. But look, if you go to regional Australia, the list changes a bit. Suddenly it's accountants, chefs, yep, again, and motor mechanics. It just goes to show how targeted this whole thing is to fill very specific gaps all over the country.
Okay, so all these people, all these skills, what does it actually do for the country's economy? Let's zoom out and look at the big picture impact.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. You might think migrants are just filling jobs that are already there, right? Nope. This data shows they are a huge driver of creating new jobs. Think about that. Over 41% of all job growth by mid-2023 came from people who had just arrived in the last 5 years. That's a massive contribution to economic growth. And there's another really crucial piece to this economic puzzle. You know how people talk about aging populations being a drag on the economy? Well, migration is basically the antidote. It's added a whopping 6.5 percentage points to the workforce participation rate. It's helping to keep the economy young and dynamic.
So the economic data looks great, but what's it actually like for people when they land? It's not always a walk in the park, and the data shows that too.
All right, let's talk about navigating the visa system itself. This number, 69,900, that's the official estimate for how many people are in Australia after their visa has expired. Now, it's a tiny, tiny fraction of the millions who arrive, but managing visa compliance is still a complex reality that's part of the overall migration picture.
Then you've got the practical stuff, like healthcare, and this is a big one. In Australia, the public health system, Medicare, is mostly for citizens and permanent residents. But if you compare that to, say, Japan, even students on short-term visas can get into their national health insurance system. It's a really practical and sometimes difficult hurdle for many temporary migrants in Australia.
And yeah, then there are taxes. Nobody loves them, but everyone's got to do them. This code is basically a reminder from the authorities that moving to a new country comes with real responsibilities, and they have strong powers to make sure everyone's playing by the rules.
It's just another system new residents have to get right.
Okay, but the story doesn't end there. Not even close. To see the real, long-term impact, you have to look at the next generation. And honestly, this might be the most powerful part of the whole story.
I mean, just look at this. It's incredible. When you look at who's getting the highest level of education in Australia, it's the children of migrants. And the data is crystal clear. This is especially true for kids who get here before they're 15 years old.
Let's put some actual numbers to that, because they are staggering. Over 54% of kids who are born overseas to migrant parents go on to get a bachelor's degree or higher. For kids with Australian-born parents, it's about 25.5%. That is more than double. This isn't just about filling jobs today. It shows that migration is a massive, multi-generational investment in the country's future.
So we've seen this massive rebound, this huge economic impact, and this incredible educational drive from the next generation. It all leads to one big question, really. With a new wave of high achievers emerging from migrant families, how will Australia adapt to harness all of that amazing potential?